All right, this meeting is called to order. Then roll call, please.
Committee member Greenbaum,
Here.
committee member McBride,
Here.
committee member Spurzum,
Here.
and Chair DeRosa.
Here. And then we will do the salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, and now we will have open time for a public comment for anything that is not on the agenda. Do we have any online people?
Actually, yes, we have a hand raised from Patty Stoller.
Thank you.
You, everybody. I'm just wondering, I didn't look with a fine tooth comb over the materials, but I know you put together what is collected in a year. Do we have anything that shows what's collected over all the years since the sales tax override began? Thank you.
Yeah, I haven't added all of that up for this meeting, but I can do that and send that information out if you would like.
Public comment, I mean, it's. They did follow up.
Public comment is public comment.
Yes.
Okay, great. We're going to close public comment. Now we will proceed with our general business items. The first item on our agenda is a summary of fiscal year 2022-23 sales tax override fund and review of the draft annual report.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to introduce Stacy Charlebois, who's here with us. She's our senior accountant here at the town of Port Madera, and she helps us out with, helps me out with the accountant. So she's here at the meeting with me today. Regarding the last year, 22-23, on page, I guess it's page 6 of your handout, your package information. There's a summary for last year, which shows that the beginning balance was approximately $8.3 million as of July of 2022. We received approximately $4.4 million in sales tax revenue, measure F, which was, that's about 300,000 more than we had expected based on the projections from our sales tax consultant. And then the total expenditures were $4.1 million. Those were on the areas that were approved by the town council, and then another $167,000 was transferred to the general fund to pay mainly for project management and a very small amount for code enforcement. So at the end of the year, the revenue did exceed the expenditures, and the ending balance increased by about $137,000 to $8.4 million. And then of that amount, $2.5 million is the emergency reserve, leaving about 5.9 million available at the end of last year. And on that same page, you can see I have listed the various areas and the expenditures for that year. And then further detail is on page 21, which is the draft report for next year. And that it shows each individual project and gives a little more detail. So if there are any questions, I can try to answer them.
Okay. So does any member of the committee have any questions about the report for 2022-23? The report itself. Yes.
So I just have a question about, so you transferred 2.5 million to the reserve?
Yes, it's in that same fund, but yes, it's considered a reserve and not available for expenditure.
Did we have a reserve before that?
Yeah, it's always been $2.5 million for the past few years. That was the amount that the town council authorized, and so it's considered an emergency
Right.
reserve.
It's been established for a few years,
Yes,
but not forever.
No,
It's a relatively recent.
yeah, maybe in the last 3 or 4 years.
Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Thanks. Carl, do you have any questions?
You good?
How about you, Jean?
So this is on the report that we're going to be giving to the council? Is that
No,
what-
not yet. We're,
We're not there yet?
no, not there yet. We're on, of the packet, page 3
Yeah, I just have some
and 4.
general questions, which may be getting ahead of myself, but, is all the housing element work done?
I can answer that one.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay, so that's not gonna be an expense going forward out of the tax money.
not until the next go-round cycle.
There was a small amount in the current year.
I think it was about $2,100.
Yeah,
around that.
yes, mhm.
And so, does that answer your question?
That answers that question. But you wanna,
Actually, I had a housing element question, but
why don't you go ahead and so finish up the housing?
so the housing element is basically has to do with the facility that was Casa, whatever. it was.
No, so the housing element was, really paying for all the services, consultant services, associated with preparing the document, the housing element, update to the general plan.
Okay,
And so, a lot of that was the environmental impact report that needed to be done.
Mhm.
And also our outreach, efforts as part of, with the goal, obviously, of ultimately, the housing element is a policy document and which has implementation programs that ultimately are intended to spur the development of new housing units and construction housing.
okay. So there's some cyclicalness
There is.
to the expenses, so it was 116K in this report. And then as you observed, it's less.
Yeah.
Well, every
and then-
7 years.
And then in the prior year, I think total costs, consultant costs were about 420,000, of which about 115, I think, were grant funded. So I want to say out of pocket for the town was about $300,000 all told over about two years approximately, with a little bit into this.
But there's an ebb and flow to it.
Every, as
What is it,
Gene
7
said,
years?
it's every 8 years, so you probably, the next one will start probably 2029 or 2028, you start working on it again.
Okay.
I think I can probably hold most of these questions for when we get to more current
Okay,
finances, so.
I had I think a typo question. On the report, 8,438,330,393, but there's other places where it's 8,438,394, so.
Okay, yeah, that may be, I don't, it may be rounding, so, okay. So,
Okay, but mostly we're referring to it as 394.
yes,
Yeah, that's what my guess was, and that the numbers that rolled into that might have been a little bit different, therefore rounding.
I did have something.
Okay,
So, this may be getting ahead of ourselves, but every year, since I've been on this, and I guess every year since this has been going on, we budget X amount and we plan X amount of projects, and many of them don't get done, and we're always
Sorry, something happened and it
That's okay.
turned on.
But you can anticipate spending money. I'll use an example from actually this current year for the Tamalpais Bridge overcrossing project, which the town council committed $3 million to support. Like a $48 million project ultimately. Now, this one is sort of a little bit different because it's outside of our control, but the most recent update, they're saying that's not gonna happen anymore this year. That's gonna hit, we're lucky, 2026. And that will be when that expenditure happens. So that's gonna be a big difference between, that's $3 million right there. That is not going to be expended when we anticipated that being expended. Others, I would say, can get caught up in a lot of it, whether you're dealing with public outreach efforts. And some of those, you anticipate getting through that in a certain time or and end up those not happening on the same schedule as you originally anticipated. And that speaks to, I think a lot of the parks and recreation projects, I will say, for example, when you're going out and we're doing that right now, this evening, there'll be a park and recreation commission meeting regarding pickleball courts and skate parks and things like that. And this will be the second or third meeting that we've had, publicly aired those. So some of it's that related to that and others outside of our control. And I would say then there's other things that are just related to project management where you just may have believed to have the capacity to do something in a certain timeline and schedule, and it just took longer than expected.
Do things get impacted by weather? And do things get impacted by, for instance, interfacing with Caltrans or the county or different levels of local and state government?
It can, yeah. I mean, it's certainly the ones that are, like I was saying, the Caltrans project, that's going to be on their timeline, whenever that hits. Others, there's usually a window with TAM grant funds, and they say you need to do this within a certain window of 3-4 years, I think is approximately, what sometimes they'll give you on certain grant funded projects. And so it can, as long as you're within that window, it can hit at any one of those times. Another example, like Paradise Drive, there's a series of steps that need to happen before you can actually build that and spend the majority of those funds, which is during the construction phase. But that's getting the project through environmental clearance, getting the construction documents up to 90% engineered, which is being worked on now. But then actually that will likely roll over the fiscal year. And so you miss it by a few months and it will show up on the next fiscal year in terms of when those monies are spent. So I think it ebbs and flows. I mean, it may end up catching up one year and you're actually spending more than you expected, budgeted for. So.
It looks like in this year, in 22-23, we revised the budget down by about $1.1 million. And most of that had to do with the San Clemente pipeline repair, which had originally had a budget of $1.3 million. And was revised to $200,000. I believe now the plan is to do that in the following year, in 24-25. That was the bulk of why that budget was revised downward by such a large amount.
I think the key thing is it's not that the project's not happening, it's more that it's just shifting out.
And it's not for lack of will on the part of the
Right.
town or the town council. It's just that there are forces that we can't,
Yeah, and you start.
we don't have that much power over.
Yes, and there's just some efforts, take longer than it may have expected, like the actual final designs and engineering, the bid process, all those things that end up having to,
Does that seem to be responsive to your?
Yeah, I'm good for 22, 23,
Okay. All righty,
in terms of questions.
okay. All right. Are there any questions with regard to all the actual
line item budget report. The group summary, the account summary, the fund summary, and basically that takes us up to page 20, which has our proposed committee report. So is there any questions up through page 19 of the packet that we haven't addressed? You've got it, Chris? How about you? You have anything? Great. All righty. So then let's go to our. Is this a different agenda item or are we full?
I think
We
we're
should-
still on the same.
Yeah, we should have, do we have a motion to approve it or?
Part of the agenda item is to look at the annual report.
Okay, great, yeah.
Yeah, we're doing it a little bit different this time and presenting the report to you, and then if you have any changes, Dario will make them and we'll bring the final report at the next meeting for you all to approve and present to the council.
Okay. So basically then page 20, 21, and 22 is the draft of our committee report. Does we have anything on any of that? I don't. Okay, thank you, Jean.
Oh, I'm fine.
I don't have a change, I just have a question. The town is still receiving small payments for Measure B sales tax?
Yes, we are. I don't know why people must have, filed late or something. We get anywhere between, well, this month, we got, I think, $14, like the month before. I think for the quarter ending December, I think we've got a few $100s.
This is 6 years out.
Yeah, I don't know why. Late payments is all I can imagine.
So it's some entity within the town of Corte Madera with regard to their sales tax filings,
It must be, yes.
and then whatever our percentages of that.
Yeah, just a local sales tax. Yeah, they must, I
Gets
don't know,
dispersed.
they must have just made an error or not filed their taxes and stuff.
Okay.
Mhm.
On the second page, on page 21, just as a point of style, under infrastructure capital projects, the last item, the dollar amount,
Oh, right.
a request that be at the end as it
Yes,
is on all the other ones above that.
Okay, yes.
And then again, another point of style on the top of the third page, there's a missing comma in 7,000, $500.
Oh, I will correct that.
I'm a retired proofreader.
We're glad to have you.
I was like, oh, no. So you're saying, because generally how we've done this before is that we finalize this thing. You're gonna do these changes to it and then we'll schedule when we're gonna present it to the council,
I think so.
and then I'll do a signature copy.
So typically in the past, we present this to you at the second meeting of the year. And then you'd have changes and then Daria would make them, but the only person who would actually review those final changes was always you. So we're changing it a little and bringing the draft report to you all.
Mm.
The first meeting that you get together in the year. And then in the second meeting, all of you can review the changes that are brought up. And then vote for the final report.
When do you expect we'll have our next meeting then? Because we,
Probably sometime in June. I think last year we met in July. And then you would present it to the council after that.
okay,
It just seems really like a really long process. I think, didn't we meet in January last year?
yeah, we met in
Not
July.
this year.
Yeah, I think
Last year we met.
It was
well, we met
February
more
and
than
July.
once. February.
Typically you meet twice a year.
Yeah,
I think if you don't have any,
changes, maybe we
Yeah,
could
you
just,
can approve it now.
yeah, you could approve it now, including the.
Yeah, that's the only changes that I have.
Okay.
I
and
would
then,
also
yeah.
to.
Yeah, and we do have to take public comment on
Okay, great.
the item.
All righty. Okay, so there's nothing further from the committee. Well, can you open it to public comment for our report?
We don't have any hands raised from our attendees.
Okay. So that being the case, it just seems that if all that we have is those minor edits, which are really don't have any substance to them.
You can approve with the
If I could
changes.
get a motion to approve it,
I'll move to approve.
thank you, with those edits.
I second.
In a second. Okay, could they call a vote?
Committee member Greenbaum,
Yes.
committee member McBride,
Yes.
committee member Spurzum,
Yes.
and Chair Gerbosi.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, the motion carries.
Which means, when would this be presented to the council?
At a future meeting and, once we work on the agendas, I will let the chair know, when that is, and I'll work with the town manager on that.
It's
It'll be before June.
likely,
I
yeah,
mean,
yes, depends upon,
Okay.
yeah, yes, okay. All right, so that takes us through the agenda item 1A, correct?
3.
3A.
3A, sorry, 3A. So the next item on our agenda is the summary of fiscal years 2023-24 sales tax override fund as of March 2024.
This item begins on page 23. This is the sales tax revenue and expenditures as of March 6th of this year. So as you can see on page 26, as of March 6th, we received about $2.2 million. And that is for the first 2 quarters and then 1 advance. The way the state gives us the money is they give 2 advances and then they do a cleanup for each quarter.
Mhm.
So that's what this number represents. And then you can see the expenditures. We've spent $1,441,000 as of March 6th. And you can see the various categories listed there. This is not complete, of course, because the year is not over. But as of March 6th, the balance in the account was approximately $9.2 million, and $2.5 million of which is that emergency reserve. And then the following pages show in 2 different formats, one by group and one by summary, by project number, project name, the expenditures. So this is just a preliminary report.
Okay, then let me ask the committee, does anybody have anything with regard to this report and this summary? But so this is basically
Year to date.
year to 2 quarters and kind of part of a 3rd quarter.
Yes, for the
Roughly
revenue,
6
yes.
months, 7 months?
No.
Yeah, for the revenue, yes. And
It's 6 months.
6 months and then part of the
Plus
next
a-
quarter. Yeah, those advances don't really mean much because sometimes we'll get, they'll give us an advance and then the ultimate payment is much more or much less than, would logically be expected from the advance. I don't know how they figured the advance.
Okay. All right, so Carl, do you have anything with regard to this?
No, I just wondered, I just didn't know the timeframe. It's not up
Yeah.
there, so it's roughly 6 months. Okay.
Yeah, 6 months is pretty firm and then
Yes.
a squishy part of the 3rd
Yes,
quarter.
right.
Chris, got anything?
So just, this is more, I'm asking you to speculate. So in 22-23, sales tax revenue exceeded expectations.
Yes,
Does that look like the case for 23-24?
yes, yeah, we're slightly ahead of where we would expect to be, yes.
Then what, if that 2.5 million is a kind of cap on the reserve from the council, what happens if additional monies come in? Because I guess we can't commingle these funds, correct? We can't take sales tax funds and say, let's pay for other elements that are outside of scope of what that, original sales tax was.
Yeah, technically, I guess we could, it's a general tax, but the
Mm.
council directed it be spent on certain things, which is why it's segregated in its own fund. So if we have extra money, it just stays in the sales tax fund. We don't move it anywhere. It just stays there, you know, for future expenditures. And if the council wanted to, they could increase the emergency reserve, you know, if they decided we have all this extra money, well, let's just increase it.
Just by example, one thing, the last couple of years we've had revenues exceed some of the projected revenues, and we've come back to the council, after discussing with the finance committee, sort of, we have unallocated funds at the end of the year, you know, where, you know, these are suggestions of where to put that, and ultimately the town council decided to sort of set it aside in these town capital project funds, or at least a significant part of it. And so, that essentially is a source of revenue that's going into capital projects such as town hall, not directly out of the sales tax fund, like you're seeing here, and as in this, the way that it's accounted for in this, but it essentially, through that mechanism, has ended up in infrastructure and whatnot, and construction costs. Part of it is also, of that unallocated, and it's hard to segregate out exactly what, you know, it's also could be that we have less expenditures than originally budgeted, for, which has been the case as well with some staff salaries in past years. So those savings essentially then end up in this discussion about where to put the resources that are essentially surplus at the end of the year.
A quick history is when this was passed, it does go into general fund, I mean, they can't do anything. And part of that was that this committee would be formed to make sure they don't do that. They could just tell us, we don't care, and they can spend it on whatever they want, but that's what the committee was formed to
Yeah.
make sure they did.
To have, literally the oversight.
Yeah, anyway, I didn't know. That's.
No, I didn't. I should go back and.
Well, it was a
Text
concern,
that sales
you know,
tax proposal on.
council members at the time where I was working with, and was very concerned that this would just go into the general fund and who knows what. So we're here to make sure they don't do that.
Did you
Yeah,
have
thank
any,
you, Adam, that explains.
did you have any questions with regard to that?
Yes, I did. So, the revenues are just through December, but these expenditures are through
Yes.
the
whatever-
beginning of March.
Right,
So we've got 3 months left, right?
that's correct.
And you've said that we have spent 16% of our budget.
Well, yes, but included in this budget is, $2.4 million is the town Pius overcrossing project. A significant portion of the budget, and that is not going to be expended this year. That's going to be, expended in the future year. Also, that same San Clemente pump station is $1.2 million, and I believe that's been rescheduled for next year, the most of it. It hasn't, I think it was, a part of it might be this year, but, most of it will be, next year. So,
So basically after 7/1/24. After
Yes,
July
well,
1st.
Summer.
yeah, yes. And then, the debt service, we've only spent 108,000 out of 470 because, that payment isn't due until May. So, yes, we have not spent, there's a lot of unspent money in this year's budget.
I will say a lot, I mean, most of the big ticket expenditures start in the spring though as well, roads and infrastructure, so, and that town Pius overcrossing was always intended to be right at the very end of the fiscal year. That was when Caltrans had it.
But it also started in the spring of 2023.
No,
I
well,
mean,
it's not our
20
project, yeah, it's a
Or
it's a
the fall
Caltrans.
of 2020, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the
Right.
council committed to essentially expending that at, I think it was, the spring of about a year ago.
We're substantially at the mercy of
Oh, yeah,
Caltrans.
that one's totally at the mercy of Caltrans when they build it.
So,
So the town hall,
Yeah.
we're moving in May.
Mayday,
So what expenses are we going to continue to have from the sales tax related to the town hall, other than the debt?
Furnishing?
I think, the architect and the project management, that's what we're paying out of this fund. The construction costs are being paid out of a different fund, but, I think we still owe Kathy, the architect, money, right? That will probably
It's
pay.
Act 5.
And Mac five,
Just
the.
the council didn't
Yeah,
do
the
it.
construction people,
Yeah.
or the construction manage, not the actual construction, but the construction management, or
Yeah.
project management, I guess.
Yeah.
That's a.
And we're still
And the
paying
rent.
temporary,
Rent.
the
The
rent
rent.
for this.
And when is this, the lease expiring here?
It's month to month at the time.
It's month to month, so as soon as we move, if we're gonna end it?
That's,
Happy
yes,
trails, right?
And we're paying rent on the trailer.
the engineering trailer as well over there.
So that'll end
That will
also.
end that. as well.
Are furnishings coming out of these resources?
Not out of this fund, that's out of, a different fund.
Okay.
Funded by the general fund.
Okay.
So in total, how much have we spent to date on the town hall out of the sales tax dollars? You know,
Out of the sales tax dollars, I can look that, I'd say, let's see,
I think we looked at
a
the
few million,
temporary facilities and I think it was, I don't know.
we spent $1 million this year.
I'll have to look the exact
Yeah.
total from this fund, yes, I'll look that up, I'll send that to you.
So that's gonna hopefully but we're gonna be carrying this debt for how long?
Let's see, until 2041, we pay, we have you're talking about the certificates of participation, that's.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That it's being paid from the these,
yes.
Yeah.
Until 2041, we'll pay $470,000 a year.
okay.
Less than 20 years.
Yeah, so, at the last town council meeting, they were talking about an intergenerational center.
Yeah.
Is that, since we haven't yet to spend everything that's been budgeted from year to year for seniors, do you do you have any idea of how much you're going to
We
be
don't yet this
spending?
time. That's the next step of that phase is sort of that evaluation, but certainly. When I go back and we have that conversation, we're gonna be talking about sales tax funding, some of that expenditure, I would think, so.
But that is extremely unformulated,
Oh, totally.
massively unformulated.
Well, I think it's getting close to being formulated.
But they don't have
I-
dollar amounts.
Yeah, we don't have dollars in
You don't have dollar amounts, but all those dollars are going to come out of this sales tax, right?
I think that would be a likely source, but I don't wanna say all necessarily. If
I
there's
mean-
other sources of funding, we'd be looking at those as well.
It could even be that there are fees that are collected with regard to certain services that are provided, just like there are for other things.
Right, and
In
yeah, it
Parks and
sort of
Rec.
has to be structured, I think. Probably, I don't know, we'll have to look at, and again, it's unformulated, this is all sort of swirling right now.
Mhm.
We just had the conversation about whether, what sort of, if that was something to look into, but we still have to go back to the council at the end of the day and even get with the proposal with costs. And get some direction around whether that's going to be something we fund likely in the next budget cycle.
Well, I think the council is pretty clear that this is a town expense. This should be a town expense for the most part. I'm not talking about. So like the renting of the space and all that, my take on what the council was saying at the last meeting is that they see that as as our expense, nobody else.
Understood, but it still hasn't been plugged into a sort of a budget.
Yeah, right. So
And said, what are we not, it has to sort of like talk about the full picture. But,
Well,
yeah,
will we have those numbers by budget time?
I hope so. Yeah. That'd be the plan.
So I have a question. Did you have another question?
Yeah, just a quick one on, are we gonna go through this yet or we will not?
No, I think we're gonna wait until we get to the third item.
So
Oh,
the numbers on this were 766,000 more than last year, the balance as of 3/6/2024. So that's like 750,000, three-quarters of a million more than last year. Is this a short-term,
Yes.
is that kind of consistent with where we would have been? Is this normal for this time of the year that you're,
Well, we definitely haven't expended, everything yet. We also haven't received all of the revenues. So that's just likely a temporary, large ending balance. Like I said, we will end up with a larger ending balance because we're not going to spend, probably of that Camel Pie is overcrossing and not a lot
Right.
of that pipeline repair. And we'll likely get at least another, 2 million in sales tax money. So, I mean, I wouldn't read too much into that extra
Okay.
700,000 at this time. And as I said, when we end the year, we probably will have a larger ending balance than anticipated, but a lot of it will be spent the following year.
okay. And kind of a little bit related to that, the way I wrote this is this a time, or when will there be a time that it should be considered to increase the amount of the emergency reserve? 2.5 million today is not worth as much as 2.5 million was when we started setting that aside. It is worth less every minute.
Right, of course. Yeah.
So I don't know if there comes a time that guidance would be to, I don't think that you need to have the 2.5 million inflation indexed or something. But there should come a time, the 2.5 million is not the buffer that is
Right, and
suitable.
Yes, and we do have other reserves as well outside of this. We have a 20% reserve in the general fund, which is about, I think it's about $4.4 million. Which could also be used for emergency or other things as the council decides. And then we have what we refer to as a $2 million pension reserve, which we've invested in CDs in case something happens with CalPERS and we have to pay a lot more than we expected or something. And then separately, we also have, I believe it's $2.5 million. Yeah, it is $2.5 million reserve in the sanitary district for those items there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
We couldn't go after that, though.
Oh, no, but no, of course not. I'm just saying that this is not the only reserve that
Yeah.
the town has.
Is this in the state of California vernacular, the quote rainy day fund kind of thing?
Yes, this is like an emergency, yeah.
Yeah,
Does it-
I mean, I think you're thinking about if something major with, let's say, I know like a pump station or something like
Mhm.
really, or we had a major issue, obviously.
Or you had an
Earthquake.
earthquake and
Things
half the
needed.
freeway
that's right.
collapsed, right?
Well, the freeways, yes.
Yeah, that's Caltrans,
but
but if
yes.
your infrastructure
Exactly.
all of a sudden was seriously impacted.
So I mean, I think you're on to, and it sort of ties with what Chris was saying in terms of, I think, if, we start to see revenues exceeding expenditures
Mhm.
or on the sales or revenues of sales tax exceeding what we budget for expenditures.
Projected, yeah.
Is there a way to sort of start thinking about how to gradually increase that reserve or carry it over year to year so that we start building that up for such an
That
event?
is suitable to supplement it more than it is.
Yeah, and I think maybe there's a way to figure out how to disaggregate this sort of unallocated balance. Then we get that.
The other question that I have kind of related to that is that anybody that's been watching knows that the state of California has extremely not managed it well there are billions and billions upside down. So my question is, how does that affect us?
Not too much, because we don't receive a lot of state funding. Most of the towns, revenues come either from property tax or, this sales tax for capital projects, or, the standard sales
Some
tax for the
grants.
we do not receive a lot of state revenue. We do get some gas tax. I mean, it's not insignificant, a couple $100,000 a year we get, but I mean, that's
But
that's for sales of.
but it's
gas.
not like it's a significant component of our,
No, we don't
revenue.
really receive, we do,
It's the grant,
Yeah,
the grants would be the one, the road
yeah.
infrastructure projects.
if they cease giving grants.
Usually that comes in that, we've been fortunate in receiving grants, they have the federal government with the infrastructure bill. I mean, that's had an effect, I think, on allowing more funds to flow through. And I think, like, for example, the Tamalpais River Crossing project got additional money through that, state, once we agreed to pitch in money there. So that's the only place I see it really potentially affecting. It would be some of the potential grants, and that, again, that flows into Transportation Authority in Marin. The gas tax, I think, is a good one. That's a whole nother conversation with.
but I don't know that they can glom on to the gas tax.
No, you can't.
No,
And it's actually a whole nother issue, because that's with more EVs going, you're gonna get less
Yeah.
gas tax in the future.
But I would
But-
be concerned if there's areas in which they are going to do belt tightening, because they are going to have to, that it would have ripple effects into county and
I think
local.
for now, fortunately, we don't have that issue,
Okay.
because even some of the projects like Paradise Drive, we have some grant funding for cost, those are gonna take a couple years to construct, as we'll talk about, 2 to 3 years to get through those, so hopefully, knock on wood, and things
Okay.
turn around by then, so,
All right, yeah, I was just,
yeah, I don't.
there are ripples.
in the past, they have, just told us, we're going to borrow like your gas tax funds, we're just going to take it out, years ago. I mean, they could
Yeah, I
take
kind of
it.
remember that.
Yeah,
Access
yeah,
ERF,
Yeah, they could, the excess ERAF, that's mostly that's from local property tax. I mean, I guess they could change the law or something, to try to take money. They were trying to take with the ERAF money, which is the, Educational Revenue Augmentation Fund, and they were trying to take some for charter schools, I guess
Yeah.
they could do that. We do get, about $800,000 a year from that excess ERAF, but.
I would just
Yeah.
say that anything that comes to us through the state of California,
Yeah,
there should be some question marks around it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Does that conclude, so do we need to make any kind of motion or anything with regard to item 3B on our agenda?
We do have to take public comment,
Oh,
and,
sorry.
there is no motion required for this. item.
Okay, so can we take public comment on item 3B?
We don't have any public comment from attendees on Zoom. or
Okay,
In person.
sure. Sure. Okay, all right. The next item on our agenda is revenue sources for capital improvement projects, which is item page 38 of our packet.
Yes, this, I just tried to list out, it was in response to a question, and we gave this, document to the town council at our strategic planning meeting, a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
And it was, just, I need to list the major sources of funds that we receive for capital projects. And so most of them I just put as flat, because we don't know, they may increase, they may decrease. But you can see overwhelmingly the sales tax is, the Port Madera sales tax, the one that we're discussing, is the largest source of revenue for capital projects. And that fund, I will say, also does pay for, some other things like disaster preparedness, and a small portion to youth programs and, senior programs. But in the past anyway, primarily it's been for capital projects. And then the street impact fees are listed there. That's when people are doing projects that, they collect a fee that's intended, it should sort of try to mitigate the effect on the roads that the project will have. Gasoline tax, that's from the state, as we discussed, the measure, the TAM revenue, Transportation Authority of Marin. There's a countywide sales tax that, that is collected and then apportioned out to, the cities and towns for capital projects. Measure A parks, again, that's a tax, a countywide tax, and that money can only be spent on parks. Could be spent on capital. This year, we're spending money to construct a restroom, in one of the parks. And then the road maintenance and rehabilitation, is another state revenue that is given to the towns and cities for capital. So this is just showing, our best guess at what the
Projection.
Yes, and then Adam has the other sheet that I think he
Yeah.
he handed out.
And I just note also on this, the other sources that aren't on here, which we just discussed, this doesn't include the grants that we may get for capital projects such as complete streets. It also doesn't include, like I mentioned, town capital project funds that are coming from other funds, that have funded in the last couple of years, capital projects, mainly the town hall. And then also any debt, obviously, that we've issued certificates of participation. We obviously did that as well, which allowed us to to basically fund some major capital projects as well. So, anyways, but I just wanted to add that context. So those are sort of the revenue streams. And then I know this has come up both at the sales tax committee level and also finance committee, just wanting to sort of round out the picture a little bit of what's coming, what's on the horizon, what are we planning to spend these, not only sales tax funds, but basically the capital budget on, which as I mentioned, is not just, and Daria just mentioned, not just the sales tax, but other sources as well. And so heavily, this is really an RJ document that I'm sort of gonna explain here, but it's.
Excuse me, do you have another copy of that?
Oh, I apologize. Did I not? Did I-
CIP stands for Capital Improvement Projects.
Thank you.
Question before we get started on that. So Diane, this is good. So when you look at all these sources of revenues, this number is what's flowing through to all these projects we're doing. Okay, so they're all kind of falling in. Okay.
Next quick question here, I don't know if it's. So I'm looking at,
Actually,
oh, I'm sorry. No,
not yet,
okay,
Not quite yet. We'll get to it.
but soon.
okay.
And so what you're seeing, on this document with the colored lines are sort of the various different buckets of. The red is sort of the miscellaneous stuff that's sort of year to year. You can see that's a constant number of just maintenance and. Things that Public Works mostly is working on and constant every year. Then you have the multimodal transportation, which is the road projects, flood control, parks and rec. Town facilities that obviously you can see that was really 23-24 was the town hall, and I guess. You could look at any sort of expenditure moving forward on like a senior center might go under that bucket going forward.
Under,
It could town-owned facilities or town facilities, I guess, it depends what we would call it. It could go under park and rec too.
okay,
And then there's the last category of climate adaptation, which you can see has some numbers attached to it. And so this is more of a planning document and it changes, it really changes constantly. You can see that there's still $3 million in here. This is as of February 8th, 2024. So like under multimodal transportation, Caltrans Temple Pass Overcrossing, that is the $3 million is still in there. We know that's already going to be shifted out to 24-25 and potentially even beyond that, I'm not sure. But we're sort of going to use it so that we know we're reserving that money sort of going forward
it's a placeholder.
as a placeholder. And you can see sort of how some of the money essentially, or the expenditures are sort of, they overlap multiple years. And so when you're seeing it on the sales tax and expenditure of X dollars for a certain project, that it, you know, it may be in the planning phase. And then, let's just take Paradise Drive Complete Streets. 125,000 this year, then another 125,000 next year, and then construction 25, 26. 700,000 is what is currently sort of mapped out as a planning document, and that also, this document doesn't include certain grants, well, grants that have already been received. So one thing to note that this is just using town dollars. Others, you're looking at, and so I think one of the main takeaways, you know, significant dollar amounts at the very bottom in terms of expenditures. Again, some of those numbers include grants, others are listed down here, but don't include any sort of application for grants yet. So, for example, if you look at Lower Christmas Tree Hill, again, multimodal transportation, we just started a project, Lower Christmas Tree Hill Complete Streets, which is a essentially a sewer rehab, multimodal complete streets project, and undergrounding and evacuation, potentially like road widening project for Redwood and Edison. A contract was awarded for design. And you'll see at the very end in 27, 28, we know there's a big dollar amount going to hit.
Yeah,
We're not ready though at all to start looking for grant funding. And we sort of recognize that project may have to wait until we're able to attract grants. Once we've gotten to the design to a certain point in the process, then that would be the time to go out and look for grants. We found we're much more successful doing that. So that's $3 million as a placeholder. Whether or not we're gonna be able to fund it at that time, you know, is a question mark, and likely will require grants to do so. You see, Shorebird Marsh Pump Station, that is a big one, and it may not be. You're looking, you know, starting to this is gonna come out of our stormwater master plan, which deals with all of our, basically our flood control systems throughout town. And we're starting to see, that will be presented, I think, at the next flood board meeting, but we're starting to see the results of that. And so I know RJ's planning for some major infrastructure improvements that are gonna be needed to be done there. And you'll see big price tag at the end of this budget cycle, you know, basically a 4 or 5 year budget cycle here. So that's essentially what this is showing. You know, some others are much more focused on this year. You see the town park under parks and rec, pickleball courts. We had that budgeted already in this year's budget. Along with town park restrooms. It's only $100,000 because the rest of it is actually paid for from a variety of Measure A Parks Fund. There was actually a Parks and Lieu fee of $220,000. So that's being funded primarily from other sources rather than capital. So that's an overview. And I just, you know, again, heavily caveated. I don't think it's something that we feel is appropriate to actually, you know, bring up for town council approval or anything, or post as it's really a living, breathing document that is a planning tool essentially. But I think it speaks to the fact that it certainly is something that staff looks at and
Yeah.
uses to sort of plan out
so it's
needs
extremely dynamic.
needs going forward, and certainly where we expect a good amount of the sales tax revenue to be utilized moving forward,
Okay.
such as we've seen in the last couple of reports that brought before you.
Okay. Any questions from the committee with regard to this thing, or? we're-
Yeah,
And I'd certainly also, yeah, go ahead. Happy to-
Jean, yes, please.
okay, so all these numbers, for the most part, other than grants and some other contributions, is gonna come out of the sales tax money.
Not there's also, well, like I said, some of it in the past has been, I will say, if you're looking at 23-24, you'll see there's a town hall construction number of $4.9 million.
So is that how much was spent from
No, that
tax?
was, no,
No,
this is just capital projects. Just think of like infrastructure projects. The sources are varied. It's not just sales tax. That was certificates of participation. That was debt. So that 4.9 was.
And also was, the town capital projects fund,
Yes.
I think was about, say, this
I don't know if
year.
we put that in.
This year, the town capital projects fund is, financing the construction in the amount of $4.4 million. Yeah, that was excess from the operating fund budget that was put in there not only in one year, but over.
okay, but the Caltrans 3 million, we've committed to that.
We've committed to it. It's a matter of when it, the timing of when it,
And it looks
we're gonna
like,
have, we're gonna pay. for
right,
it.
and it looks like the pump station, San Clemente Pump Station, which I think was discussed at the town council, was it discussed at the town council? I know there's
I do-
like,
there's two of
there's like a big problem with it,
Well,
right?
there's two. So the San Clemente pump station is actually a flood control pump station. The one that was discussed recently, which is confusing because it's the same numbers, is a sanitary district 2 pump station.
So they
So
pay for
that's,
that.
they pay for that. That's
Okay.
separate. Yeah.
Okay, but that's another $3 million, $3.5 million. So, okay, so
So some
One
of
that's
this comes
near-
from,
one that's near and dear to my heart, as you know, is the Casa Buena Complete Streets project. And, nothing was spent on that for design this year. It looked like
Well-
from what I saw.
It's, and this is where we're doing that this year. So we have, I think they're also, whether or not the 600,000 is, I think, budgeted for that this year. So we still have a few months left.
Yes,
in the last quarter.
most of the money for that project is budgeted out of, grants, and the town funds and, the street impact fees.
And how luck,
I thought that we should put the Casa Buena one.
I think you're the
Yes,
same
that-
question I
It's
have.
like 400,000.
Yes,
Okay,
133,000 is budgeted out of the sales
Yeah.
tax fund.
so,
that's definitely going to be happening.
so this
this
is very
year.
dynamic, as you said. So how dynamic is that? Are we talking about
It's happening this
24,
year.
25
Yes, we're talking
for
about
the
23,
complete streets?
we're talking about this summer and next summer.
Okay,
So by July 1, 24 and July 1, 25. Looks like about 2.5 million plus or minus.
Exactly, and some of that may, and this is where if you're in July. If you're in July 1, actually 25, you're into 25, 26.
It might bleed over.
So, yeah, exactly. So usually those summer construction projects where all the road work gets done bleeds in, it sort of ends up being.
So
rolling
she's
over.
gonna see a lot of gelati trucks out there.
You're gonna see, no, I promise you that is happening, so.
so if I add all this up at the bottom there, it's a lot of money.
Yes.
It doesn't add up to what we're getting.
No, because it's not all coming
I
out.
know
It
it's
also,
not all
it
coming
also
out of
speaks
there,
to the fact that, again, the comment before was that we weren't spending down, so there are some, right now, I think we're looking at, we started with a 23, I think, $6 million, excluding the reserve. So you add on top of that, what we're gonna get, this year, another
Yeah, I
5.5.
I guess this 5 million threw me off, so, that wasn't part of the,
Yeah, exactly. The debt there's other sources. as well.
Okay.
Alrighty, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else, anything else from the rest of the committee before we go to public comment?
I just have a quick thing. So these pickleball courts have been quite exciting. Now, that's just tossed in there, and 140
Yes,
Measure A parks is giving us 88, but we were already spending the 88.
yes.
So basically, they're just throwing into this thing, here's another 60 grand, or
Yeah, well, well,
that's a
I
lot
mean,
for a couple pickleball courts, but.
yeah, and partly one of the, actually of some of the unallocated ending balance of the prior fiscal year, 200,000 was allocated to parks addressing this, pretty much. And so it was coming out of the town capital projects fund as well,
Okay.
as a source.
I just, yeah, people are very excited about it, of course.
Well, yeah, we got some, if you want to stick around, it will be discussed this evening, right here in this very room, so.
Chris,
Some
do you have
interesting public
anything?
comments.
No question.
Pickleball courts, senior centers, overpasses.
Swim tournaments.
All right,
Where they take place.
so let us go to public comment. That's you?
Yeah, mine might be just a follow-up to what Jean was getting at. And it's a point of clarification. If we look at fiscal 2024-25,
On which form?
both of them. Both of
Okay,
them. So we're projecting a revenue of 5.5, but we've got expenses projected at 8.9. How do you guys, why do you put so many projects on here when we got a $3 million shortfall? I don't get it.
but it's not all, it doesn't all come from the sales
Well, it's
tax.
even more of a shortfall since the stuff from the prior year is now
It's
going to
not.
be added to the,
Okay,
that
so
year.
I,
So it's even a more of a shortfall.
But
so it's not worth the paper it's printed
No,
on,
it's
right?
not a short, no,
No?
there's other sources of funds.
there are others, so this is about expenditures.
But then if there are other sources of funds, why don't we reflect it on the revenue
Well,
side?
these were the
Because
revenues
this is
that-
a sales tax
This is
committee.
the
We're
revenue
not the
going-
all sources of funds committee. We're just sales tax.
These revenues are, what I'm trying to project going forward.
Uh-huh,
Some of the money that's been spent primarily on the town hall project
uh-huh.
and also budgeted 600,000 for that overcrossing project and some to do with parks, a small amount, that 200,000. That money was coming either from the debt that was issued or the excess in the operating fund, and we put that into that town capital projects fund. So for this year, we have.
Yeah, I'm talking next fiscal. I'm
Okay,
talking
okay,
20,
but, yeah,
24, 25.
oh, 24,
So
25.
but again, we have $6 million ending balance in 2023 for the last report.
Okay, so if we were to complete the revenue page, we would see a little asterisk down here that says, surplus from prior fiscal year is X, therefore total revenue will be.
Yeah, you could, yeah, and if you look at my note, actually, the one I gave you, it
Yeah,
doesn't include grants.
I
and
know, and do
town
we know
capital.
what that's worth, guys?
Yeah.
Do we know what that's worth?
You know, no, we
No,
don't,
we don't know.
you don't know.
Because they
all-
haven't been
it
applied
changes.
for.
Changes, exactly. So that's what I was trying to say. If you look further out, we haven't even applied for the grants, but we typically do to pay the big ticket dollar.
And you
projects.
can't apply for them until the project has received a certain amount of conditioning and formulating, so
Design work.
you can't apply for them years in advance. You have to apply for them.
So when I look at the projects, we don't go forward on them till we have the money. Is that,
Yeah,
is that an
yeah.
oversimplification?
That's correct. We wouldn't put them in the budget if there was no way to
Got
pay for
And
them.
one last point, and then I'll be quiet. There's no debt service in here as an expenditure.
No, these are just.
Capital.
Just
those are
projects.
just the
Yeah,
cap-
because of
that's
the capital improvement
Okay,
projects.
thank you.
All right, do we have any public comment online?
We do not have any public comment from attendees online.
Thank you. All right, does that conclude? Going back to my agenda. Is there anything else with regard to item 3C that we need to cover? I don't think we need to have a motion or anything.
No, it's just an
You
information.
just beat it to death.
So the
Meant to
next,
generate a lively conversation.
It's
so
helpful.
the
though.
next
It's-
meeting would be for the budget? Is that the only thing that we'd be meeting for? The next budget?
Yeah, we can. But we can,
The next, it would be after the close of of the 23-24.
Right.
We have the actuals closer.
Will we have a meeting when you have the budget available for next year?
But so planning for the budget, you wanna
We
do,
can, though typically we don't as they normally
We
meet when
did
the
in the
budget has been
past.
adopted. In late June and late July, for the times that they met before, by that time, the budget's already been adopted. This group typically meets after the budget's been adopted.
Years ago, we would be having a meeting before the budget was adopted, am I correct?
I mean, we
To be honest, I do not recall.
we can, one of the cool things that we have now at our, Stacy's here, actually. And Daria have been working, but we have now Open Gov, which our budgets are actually, we're gonna try to do the budget this year on our software platform that actually makes it pretty easy to sort of just at least tour through what the budget's, draft budget will look like. So I don't know,
I guess if
What do
we
you
have
think on it?
questions, we could just ask
absolutely,
questions.
well, yeah, let
If we
me,
see it.
let me think on it a little bit. I know we're gonna be very busy, in May and June with our town hall and moving and stuff, so. But I'm certainly, whether it's myself, Daria, anybody who's interested, I'm happy to walk through where we are in the draft budgets, and we'll certainly have public meetings with the council, of course, and workshops probably on.
Okay,
Mhm.
so are we ready to move on to agenda item 3D? Approval of the minutes of the July 24, 2023 meeting. That was our last meeting. Does anybody have any comments, corrections, additions to the minutes before I cover mine?
I was going to talk about the 5-year plan that we didn't see in the package, but that's moved now, so. Because we got this today, so, yeah, because we discussed that at the last meeting, but, okay. So, no, I don't have any.
Anything with regard to the minutes?
Correct.
Okay,
Never know.
nothing.
No.
All right, on page 3 of 6, line 21. Committee member, is there supposed to be a name that goes with committee member? Anonymous,
I'll look to see.
an anonymous committee member?
This was, you said, page.
Line 21, page 3.
Whether that, some committee member.
Somebody just
Wanna
came,
claim it?
Someone on the
Who wants to
committee.
claim it?
came through the door. Okay, line 32, same page. I think this item is with regard to the senior program. I think it's kind of responsive to Patty Stolier's query in public comments. Is that right?
Yes.
It's a little in specific. What you were talking about. Can you add
Line
some
32.
language there that makes that clear?
Okay.
That's all I have.
Oh, cool.
Very good. Either I've been slacking off or she's been doing really good. So with those corrections, can I get a motion to approve the minutes with those two?
I move to approve the minutes as modified by the correction.
Thank you. Do I have a second? All right, can we call for a vote?
Okay, committee member Greenbaum,
Yes.
committee member McBride,
Yes.
committee member Spurgeon,
Yes.
Chair Garbosi.
Yes.
Thank you, the motion carries. And then we will let you know on, we did have to ask for public comment on the minutes.
Oh.
Sorry,
Public comment on the
and we don't have
on the
hands
approval of the
raised.
minutes. Thank you.
And I will email you all with the proposed dates for the next meeting.
And you'll, once you groom the report, then you'll let us know when it looks like that will go into the council agenda.
Yes, I'll do that as well.
Okay. We're adjourned.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
You all guys. It's your time.
Pleasure doing business.